everybody, welcome back to another video living with Hashimotos. Today we're going to be talking about the gluten dilemma, that anyone with an autoimmune disorder will tell you the first thing the doctor tells you to cut out of your life is gluten. And if you've successfully done that, you've probably discovered that gluten is where flavor lives. And taking it out of your life just makes you sad. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So it was weird. So when I first got diagnosed and the doctor was talking about all the stuff that, I should do and change, she immediately wrote down, like, the first thing she wrote down was, gluten. Get rid of gluten. But she never really explained why. It was just kind of this thing, like, it's going out of your life, you're done. I did get tested for celiac disease twice, which is the autoimmune condition where, gluten, like, your body, like, takes this, like, the lining of your intestines and stuff, and it's bad. Like, it's bad. It's really, really bad. Like, people with celiac disease cannot eat gluten at all, or they will die. I was tested negative for celiac, so I won't necessarily die, but, like, I still have a sensitivity to gluten, and I can tell immediately if I've been glutened by accident by food. I'm, like, immediately more exhausted. I get way puffier. I get immediately more moody too. Like, it's weird. It's very weird. Gluten and sugar. Sugar for me is a no-no. But that's a different episode. But yeah, so once you start reading labels and, like, you find out what gluten is, like, in, and it's in everything. And there's different things that, you might not think of as gluten, but are disguised as gluten. Like, anything that says natural flavors, they don't have to declare it, apparently, but, like, that can include something with gluten. So there's, like, a whole list of stuff, and you can Google them on your own, of the things that you're supposed to stay away from if you have a gluten sensitivity. Now, what does this mean for people that are diagnosed? It means that you pretty much can't eat out. That's not true. I'm not gonna say that. You can't. I wouldn't trust something that someone brought into, like, a break room, for example, unless you plan to go up to the person that brought it in and say, "Show me your ingredients list." You definitely have to pack in advance. Meal prepping, very important, because you might find yourself in a situation where you need food, but you're somewhere that doesn't have a gluten-free option. It's becoming a little bit more mainstream now. People think that it's, it's trendy, and the millennials are ruining the world with their gluten-free nonsense. But it's true. Like, a lot of people are more sensitive to gluten. And from my research online, we're actually adding it into food that doesn't need it. Like, there's recipes that I found online that need a glutinous flour because it adds, it keeps things more shelf stable. It makes things fluffier, like bread, rising is a lot of things, but, like, more glutinous flour will help it do that. Like, so we're adding it into our food, where it doesn't need to be there. And there are certain things that are naturally gluten-free, but you still have to look for the gluten-free label because it's processed in the same plant that handles gluten items. For example, like oatmeal. Oatmeal on itself is naturally gluten-free, but because it's often processed in a plant that does wheat, the cross-contamination possibilities are very high. So you have to, like, find a reputable source, certified gluten-free, do your research, make sure you're good, because you will immediately notice a difference. Once you've eliminated it from your life for any significant amount of time, once you put it back in, you are immediately going to notice a difference. And when I did that elimination diet that I mentioned, the 6 weeks, I was perfect, didn't cheat, didn't do anything bad. I immediately noticed once I started the reintroduction phase, like, which foods were causing a reaction and I was sensitive to. I thought of it more today because, it is my birthday today, and I asked someone to make me I found a gluten-free cake mix on Amazon because you cannot find that in stores around me. And everyone in my family, every time I bring over, because I sometimes bring my own food because I don't expect people to go out of their way because gluten-free options are way more expensive. So I will often bring my own food and I'll say, hey, do you want to try this? It's actually pretty good. And they're just like, no, I'm okay. We're good. You keep your gluten-free stuff and I'll eat normal food. But they said this actually, you wouldn't, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know that cake mix was gluten-free. So there are some fun options that you can find. It's a lot of trial and error. It is going to be way more expensive. Everything, it just seems like everything, because healthy is trendy. I don't know why healthy is trendy. Healthy should just be the norm. But it's definitely more expensive and not as readily found. You have to look, most food stores now will have like the section for that stuff. It won't be like intermixed with the regular stuff and just like have, its section on that shelf. You have to go a whole separate area to find your stuff. And even then you still have to read labels. Reading labels has become so important, especially because one of the yes foods for me are avocados. I found out, because I had never eaten avocados, I didn't really like them, but they were a healthy fat that I was allowed to have on this diet. So I said, sure, I'll eat it. I got the avocado oil. I was making my eggs with that. I was cutting them up and putting them into smoothies and like trying to hide the flavor in a smoothie. Highly recommend if you can do that because it adds a nice creamy consistency to it. So that was nice. But I found out I'm allergic to avocado. Not like any kind of anaphylactic thing. I just break out in a major rash everywhere. But yeah. So once you start to eliminate certain things and you introduce things, you start to realize, oh, holy crap, this is causing a reaction. But yeah, so gluten is just one of those things that you cannot have. And it ties into it's. So when I went for my second opinion, endocrinologist, I cannot talk today. Brain fog. It's all part of the thing. Bear with me. Jesus. So it's not a acceptable diagnosis. They're not recognizing it as a diagnosis, probably because that means the FDA will have to actually like change all of the regulations. But leaky gut is kind of attributed to the reason why gluten is a problem for a lot of people. The theory being that with the leaky gut, your gut lining is more permeable, the gluten particles make way into your bloodstream, and then your body is now seeing this foreign invader and saying, attack, 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 is not supposed to be there. However, for those of us with Hashimotos, your thyroid proteins very similarly resemble a gluten protein, and it can't distinguish, which is why the body creates antibodies and starts to attack the thyroid because it thinks it's the gluten. Now, it is the theory of some doctors, and I have not been good on my diet long enough to actually test the theory, but now that I'm doing these videos, I think I'm going to, and I'll share with everyone my everything that's coming up. I want to repair my leaky gut issues. I'm taking probiotics and all these different, L-glutamine and things that are supposed to repair and help the gut lining, and I'm eliminating gluten completely from my life. It's gone. I've been gluten-free now for 3 weeks, and I can honestly say that I feel so much better most of the time with that. And I want to ask my endocrinologist, like, can we, in addition to testing the thyroid levels, can we test the antibody levels? And if the antibodies are going down as a result of these changes, then that kind of lends, credence to this theory. It is definitely a theory right now. If you go into a medical office, like, insurance will not cover this diagnosis because they're bastards. But it's gaining more scientific, what's the word I'm looking for? It's you know what I'm trying to say. Like, the scientific community is starting to recognize it more, even if the health people, insurance companies are not. So that's kind of the plan right now. So if you don't have an autoimmune disorder, I highly recommend cutting gluten for 6 weeks, because 6 weeks, like, your body needs time to like get things out of your system. 6 weeks, and then like have a roll and see how you feel. Most people, I think, are sensitive to gluten and don't even realize it. So that's something I highly recommend everyone to do. But it is the unfortunate truth that uh, you cannot eat a gluten-free roll and get the same enjoyment out of it. It's not the same. It's not the same at all. Like, there's a bunch of brands that make gluten-free buns and stuff, and you try to have a hamburger on a gluten-free bun, and it is not the same experience. It's okay. It's passable, but it's not the same. Um, I'm hoping that if I can get my antibodies down, like, with all of this, and it's probably gonna take, like, a year or so. This is a marathon, people, not a sprint. I did read somewhere that you can have like homemade sourdoughs because it naturally breaks down the gluten. So anything that, like, because it's fermented, and as long as it's fermented for more than 3 days, it should have broken it down to a level where it's not like a problem. So once my numbers are good, I might test that. We'll see. We'll find, because sourdough bread with olive oil is delicious and good for you. But that's in the future. That's like a year in the future that we're gonna try that. But yeah, so that's kind of the gluten dilemma. Once you're diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, gluten is unfortunately been removed from your life. Gluten-free options, if you can tolerate them, almond flour, coconut flour, rice flour, if it's allowed, has actually been a pretty good baking substitute. You get like the same texture on certain things. It is a little more dense, but not nearly as bad as like coconut flour. Coconut flour in baking is god awful. Just don't do it. It's gonna be terrible. Almond flour is okay. I've had almond flour crackers that were like, it was okay. Cassava flour is a popular one, but be very careful on measuring. If you're doing these flours, get yourself a little mini scale, because weight, not volume, matters. It matters. Get yourself a little cheapy $14 weight scale and measure your stuff that way, because it's going to make your life so much easier. Trust me. Tiger nut flour is a good one, and arrowroot flour. Like, there's a whole bunch of different flours that are, gluten-free and allowable on the autoimmune protocol diet. Almond flour is not, because you're not allowed to have nuts, but the rest of them you should be okay. Tiger nut sounds like a nut because it has the nut in the name, but it is a tuber. So tiger nuts are allowed on the diet. And they're pretty good, actually. They're expensive, but I tried them and they're delightful. Soak them first because they will hurt your teeth. They're hard little fuckers. But yeah, so that's kind of the gluten dilemma. But like I said, I had cake for my birthday today. It was gluten-free. It was delicious. It was not sugar-free. That sugar's a whole separate issue. I'll talk about that next time. But yeah, so that's it for today. That's kind of the gluten dilemma. I'm sorry to deliver the bad news. Talk to your doctor about it. But when they mentioned to me, I was told that I could have cheats on everything except for gluten. So, have I cheated with gluten over the last 3 years? Of course. Did I immediately regret it every time? Hell yeah. So it's just kind of, you have to decide what you're willing to deal with and how bad you want to feel, because gluten is one of those immediately you're going to feel like crap type of deals. So that's it for today. I want to go enjoy the rest of my birthday, and I hope you guys have a lovely evening. Bye.